Let's recognize Senator Ronnie Cromer, and Ronnie's gonna come back and he'll be our featured speaker one day. But Ronnie, you wanna give us an update?
No. Well, there's a lot going on in the State House right now, and there's nothing going on in the State House right now. If you've been keeping up, we're trying to get the governor's, primarily the governor's wishes, is for us to reorganize state government, reform state government and the Department of Administration. And unfortunately, we had a compromise or an agreement last year with the governor and everybody concerned. And when it came over to the Senate, somehow or another over the summer, in the interim, there were like 3 senators that decided that they were going to rewrite the whole thing. Well, if you've ever looked at the Health Care Reform Act that was passed by Congress, it's like 2,000 pages. Well, when you take about 50 to 75 pages of changing all the agencies around, you can't just write an amendment overnight, which we've done, several of our senators have done. And then we've all got to look at it and make sure that we really didn't create some unintended circumstances. So it's taking a while. And every time we think we're about to an agreement and can go ahead and pass it, then somebody else will come up with another stack of papers, you know, that we got to read through and try to decipher what's good and what's bad. So we're trying to get all that done now. I do want to say, you understand I was being facetious when I said raising your taxes for more judges. That's the last thing we're going to do. Now, the Supreme Court Chief Justice, I believe, Beth will agree with me, she is the one that comes to the Senate and the House, to the legislature, and asks for extra help, you know, if she needs another judge or whatever. For the last 4 or 5 years, we all know where revenue streams have been in the state, and they have not been good. So we've had to balance our budget. We can't print more money. I told Jim DeMint one time, I saw him at the Clemson Carolina ball game. I said, hey, I see y'all are printing more money up there. I said, we're going down to Gervais Street and we're going to open up the old Confederate printing press and we're going to start printing more money down there. And he said, well, you know, it'd probably be worth a lot more money. And the very next week, I read in the state paper where the archives had found a bunch of these old Confederate bills in the back, started selling them and putting them in our revenue. So we don't have that ability. We have to balance our budget, and I think that the people down there are working on this on a regular basis, and they're doing it right now. The House is doing it right now. We just had an update Tuesday from the governor on what she wants in the new state budget this time, and we're going to try to hold to it for her, and hopefully we can. It's a very modest increase. I think like 5.2 million or 5.4 million, might be a little bit higher than that, but she's looking for like 200 more million in a $5 or $6 billion budget, so it's not much increase. Y'all read in the paper where we have a lot of money coming in this year, and we got a lot of surplus. That's not true. That's false. That's being put out by the state paper. A lot of it's non-recurring money that was left over from last year, and we had some deficits that were run by some former agency directors that we've got to fill in the holes. Hopefully, most of that money we can put in a contingency reserve fund, and that's what we're talking about trying to do right now. We all know what's going to happen in the next year or two. I mean, the economists are predicting it. We're going to have another downturn in the economy, and when we do, it would be great if we didn't have to go out and cut all these services again like we did 2 or 3 years ago. If we had the money in the bank to be able to spend, to keep that level of spending up, not have to make cuts. Now, that being said, there are a couple things we can do. One of the governor's prerogatives is trying to cut the state income tax. And if we can ever do that, I think we can bring even more industry into South Carolina, because a lot of these businesses come in and see where they got to pay 5% on corporate income tax, and they'll say, I'm going to go into Florida, and that 5% on the amount of money that they're making is a lot of money. It keeps them from coming into South Carolina. And I didn't mean to get off on a tangent. Beth did a good job this morning explaining her position, and again, I was just kidding when I said raise taxes to hire more lawyers.
Look at him, look at the camera.
You insisted to write us up.
Yes, ma'am. I read the new health care law. It took me like forever.
Oh, you know, absolutely.
Check section
if
you
read it, you were ahead of about 99.9% of the people in the United States.
Especially the Congress.
Congress, yeah.
However, is there any effort being made to make legislation more readily available for someone even with a college education? I have 2 and it took me forever.
No, it's not that hard. You go on scstatehouse.net and they've got several search engines on it. If you know the bill number, you can just type in the bill number and it'll immediately pop up. If you don't, you may have to put in keywords like sales tax or whatever you're looking for.
It's just
and
when
it'll
I'm
bring
reading
up all
these
the
things, there's like
legislation.
loophole A, loophole B, loophole.
Yeah. And, well, listen, these are legal terms. And John Kerry will tell you that when you start getting into legal terms, I would imagine John probably has a hard time sometimes just searching through all the codes in South Carolina to find out what he's going to tell his client.
It's
Well,
y'all write them, yeah.
Yeah, it's just well, they're written by attorneys. No, they really are. They're written by attorneys.
Can you make them a little easier to work? Even college-educated people can understand them without having to.
I wish I could go write all this stuff for them.
Yeah.
Honey, maybe that's a new job for you.
I mean, I'll give you a good example. This is something you can look at. Your assault battery statute. It was written by a doctor. Okay. I think actually a doctor who ultimately got indicted for some kind of insurance fraud. Needless to say, it is so convoluted and confusing. I don't think they could convict anybody of a first-degree assault in this state if they tried. I mean, it's that convoluted. It's that confusing. I don't know how a jury would understand it. And that's just an example. But
Yeah.
It shouldn't be written in legalese to where majority of the public can understand it. Because are you an attorney?
yes.
Because if you, as an attorney, can read it and not fully comprehend it and have to spend way beyond the normal amount of time to research it, then where does that put the average person who does not have a law degree and who does not have the vocabulary to understand legalese?
There are books.
You know,
There are volumes and volumes of law on statutes that are considered vague and ambiguous. Okay, or parts of statutes that are considered vague, and the courts always seek to impose the legislative intent, what they really meant by it. I mean, it's just a recognized fact that when we think something and we write it down and try to impart that thought, different people reading it will have different.
And you have to understand that the law is always subject to interpretation depending on what legal mind is interpreting it.
What Eddie's really getting at is when Clinton said, "I didn't have sexual relations with that woman."
Yeah.
That interpretation is what Eddie thinks.
I mean, and based on my service of 8 years, and I have sat with just about every judge in this state, every judge in this state. Every single judge will interpret the law differently.
Absolutely.
That's the problem.
Every one of them.
And even when it goes to our top court, which is the Supreme Court, you're going to find that sometimes they interpret the law the way they want to interpret the law, and not the way we intended the law to be in the legislature. So what we'll have to do is go back and rewrite the law based on the the Supreme Court's opinion or whatever. But before y'all leave, let me just introduce y'all to Mark Newth. Mark just came on board with me this morning as my campaign manager. He just recently finished one campaign, and I'm not holding that against him. It was a Rick Perry presidential campaign. So I still have confidence in him, even though Perry decided to pull out, after he left South Carolina, and did do that well. But the governor, Governor Perry, if you've ever met him behind the scenes, I was originally a Perry supporter, and the governor is a super nice guy. One thing I didn't know that Starboard Communications, Walter Wetzel, told me not long ago. He said that people didn't realize that he'd had back surgery, and he just had it before he started this race, and he was actually in physical pain in a lot of these things that were going on. And he said, had I known that the time I was going to run for president, I'd had the surgery a year ago and been over it. But everybody that's talked to him behind the scenes says he's really a lot sharper guy than he came across on TV. He made some mistakes on TV, and that set him back in the beginning. So just wanted to introduce Mark to you this morning, and I want to tell you I enjoyed being here with you folks this morning. Y'all have some lively discussions.
Thank you.
Let's go Senator Cromer. Let me say this about Senator Cromer.